All right, welcome to Section 3, Measurement of Energy Expenditure. You know, there's a number of different ways that we measure energy expenditure. You know, if you were to look in calories burned, and let's just start out with calories, for instance. When you look at a nutrition label on a box or a product, right, and it says that in this product there's 230 calories. How do they know that? Have you ever thought about that? Some of you probably remember this, but how do they know that there are 230 calories in that product? Well, there's something called a bomb calorimeter, right? That you put this food in. Some nutrition scientist somewhere, that's what they do for a living, is they burn food, and they put it in this bomb where you've got water. You got this insulated chamber with water running around it, and then there's a fuse, and you've got the food is in there, and you burn it. Right, and then remember, based on that definition of a calorie is the amount of energy needed to raise 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. And because gram is such a small weight, we actually look at kilograms, and that's how we get the term kilocalories. The point here is that we can actually burn the food, determine how many calories are in that food. And that's called direct calorimetry. When we're directly measuring the heat that's produced, that's one way to do it. We can do this with humans, not burn them, right? We're not going to burn them, but we can put them in a room. It's called a room calorimeter, right? We can put them in a room with a similar type of idea, and as they go through their daily routine, as they give off heat, as they produce heat, and remember, as you exercise, you're going to be producing more heat. As you give off that heat, it can be measured. And this only is found in really high-tech, high-level research institutions that really have this room calorimeter. And because it's expensive and not very practical, you know, it's only used in these large research facilities. But the way we do it in most cases, in most labs, is through what's called indirect calorimetry. That's how we measure energy expenditure. The measurement of oxygen consumption as an estimate of metabolic rate. We know that there's a relationship between the amount of oxygen that your body consumes and the number of calories that are expended. And so that's why it's called an indirect method, indirect calorimetry. We do it indirectly, not by the heat that's given off or produced, by the amount of oxygen that's consumed. Okay, by the amount of oxygen that's consumed. And here's an example of a standard what we call a metabolic cart. And I just pulled one here. Again, I have no affiliation with any of these products that you may see, or pictures, images in some of these modules that we have coming up. But this is a Parvomedics metabolic cart. And the most important aspects of the cart are here in the middle. This right here is called the gas analyzer. So this is where you're going to analyze carbon dioxide and oxygen. And this clear, you can't really see it, but this is the mixing chamber. And so you've got the hose that will be attached to this white piece, and they breathe through the hose into the mixing chamber, and then gas is sampled here into this piece, and then the amount that's consumed, the oxygen that's consumed, and the carbon dioxide that's produced is calculated, and the gas is analyzed. It was a pretty cool piece of equipment, and this one in particular is one of the lower end pieces of equipment. To be quite honest, this one is probably $25,000, which is still kind of expensive, right? Yeah, common way that we measure energy expenditure in the lab, and it is kind of considered the gold standard for measurement of energy expenditure. And here's an example of someone, this isn't in my lab, but just showing you, and here they've actually got a canopy covering them. And if we were going to do a resting metabolic rate test in the lab, the way we would do this is we would keep somebody on the metabolic cart for about 30 minutes. We would do that, and you can see, and oftentimes what you would do, because people get nervous, right, the first few minutes. So I usually would throw the first 5 minutes of data out and the last 5 minutes of data, and take that maybe 20 minutes in the middle to get your energy expenditure at rest. But you can see the hose that attached to the cart. I mean, it's spitting out the numbers for us here on the screen. And we'll show you some of this data coming up. But there's a lot of other devices we can use to measure energy expenditure. This is a med gym, body gym. Some of you guys may be familiar with that and use this piece. I went to our local fitness center here, and that's what the dietitian uses. She uses this med gym where you're able to just, there's a mouthpiece that attaches here, and you use a nose clip. I think it takes like a minute or so. and it tells you how many calories you're burning at rest, and it does a pretty good job. There are other metabolic carts, even lower end metabolic carts than the Parvomedics, like the cardio coaches. We see that a lot in some of the fitness centers. So those are options. And I wanted to show you here as we go through what it looks like for somebody that's actually hooked up on a metabolic cart. You can tell that this is an old picture. If you look at the monitor's really huge. If you look at this subject, he's got a face mask on, and that's kind of my preferred way to do these types of tests, even at rest, because this you can put a nice face mask on them. It's relatively comfortable. Again, some people do get claustrophobic. I've had some really fit athletes on the treadmill here, and I get them started on the test, and they become claustrophobic with the headgear, and they just have to stop. But the way this works is you see these valves, and the white piece on this side, there's one-way valve, so it allows air to come in from the room. He consumes it and then expires into the other side, through the other side, and it goes through the hose to our metabolic cart, just as you saw earlier. And this is just an example of someone running versus or walking versus someone who's running. It's pretty much the same. And sometimes because they're moving so much, you kind of have to hold the hose. But again, this is how we measure energy expenditure, kind of the gold standard at rest and during exercise. So with this, we'll end it here, and we'll jump into our next section and look at some laboratory data.